Hello and Assalamu alaikum everyone. Exhibition Cadet Sabir Shah for my channel Mission Cadet 9936. And again, the hot topic of the day is the updates on Air India Flight 171, which crashed on June 12th, 2025. And 241 passengers perished in the air or on the ground, and one survivor, plus 38 doctors on the ground. So a tragic incident, and recently there has been an update on that one. The update is about the Indian news channels. I will just quote one, NDTV, and now they are talking about the sabotage of the aircraft. Okay, so you need to know the political background behind that, because if you remember, they put the whole country on war because of a Pahalgam attack in a tourist area in Kashmir, in Indian occupied Kashmir. And they waged a war on Pakistan, killed about 38 to 39 civilians, children, and women. And where are they now? Have they caught those terrorists? Have they killed them? What are the news about that one? All of a sudden, it went quiet. Reason being, there was an election coming up in Bihar, the province of India. And for that election, every time there's an election in India, right before that, they come up with some kind of false flag operation and blame it on Pakistan because they sell this sentiment to their nation. Sorry for my Indian viewers, but that's the truth. So the Bihar election is still not done. So the only way they can take it away from their weaknesses or their negligence in terms of, the minimum equipment list and letting this faulty aircraft fly in the first place, they don't want to take that blame. They want to either blame Boeing or Pakistan. So it's going to come very soon. Don't worry. We're already down 11 of your aircrafts, which your media reported. So we are waiting for more to come. So please come over. Now let's get to the updates. So I made about 5 videos on the same topic. And in video 1, I gave my condolences to the families who lost their lives and beloved ones. And what would a pilot have thought once he comes across this kind of huge disaster? Like, they had only 30 to 40 seconds, probably 90 seconds if you start from the takeoff roll all the way till they went into the doctor's hostel. 90 seconds. And that was my first video. Second video, I debunked a few of the no flap theory, for example, by Captain Steve. And then in another video, I talked about the density altitude, that probably be the human error of misquoting the wrong weight and the stuff like that. And then the pilots, they put the wrong readings because they were provided the wrong readings by the ground management, by the engineers, by the loaders. So probably because of the hot weather conditions, the calculations were wrong, and the engines probably were not meant to function at what they were functioning at. So in my last video, I came up with, because I used the power of deduction and deduce all those. Again, we have to talk about these kind of incidents so that they don't happen in the future. And any theory that is appealing to anyone should follow that one. And of course, you will avoid many disasters like that. So my theory was, one, the data input was wrong into the flight computer systems, FADEC in this case. And for that, the engines did not behave according to what type they were supposed to behave of. So that was my theory initially. Then second on, I upgraded it by seeing the videos and checking out that there is a huge gust of wind on the left side of the runway once the aircraft takes off, but there's nothing on the right side. So that means one engine was functioning. And with that, I gave up the cultural background of South Asia. That with minimum equipment list, you fly. Minimum equipment list is the aircraft could have three major kinds of problems occurred on the ground. Number one has to be replaced right and wrap, and there's a no-go. Pilots do not take off, like both engine failure. What are you going to do? So that's just the maximum you could go for, right? Which is obvious. Even the engineer won't let you take off because you can't, right? So I'm just giving an example. So one has to be replaced right and then before the takeoff. So like the landing gear problem, right? So that's the first level. The second level is like this could take like up to a few days. For example, I was flying from Bangkok to Shanghai the other day, and I found out duct tape on the what you call the sharklets, the extended on Boeing 737 and also Airbus A320 or 321. You will see that the ailerons at the end are a bit bent upwards. That's to increase the lift, I would say, in a layman language. So I saw duct tape, the silver colored duct tape on that one. Now that means that the aircraft can take off, it can land without any problems, but that problem has to be addressed within 3 or 4 days, 72 hours they say. And the third one is, which in South Asia people mostly fly on, is what, that if there's a key component missing, and that is given 10 days. So within 10 days it has to be replaced and the aircraft can take off. So what happens that within 10 days, what they do is they find the same component from another aircraft to replace it. Now, it could be anything. Okay, what I'm saying is that the time duration. One is right now at that time. Second is 3 days at most, and then the second one is the 10 days. So now the problem has been solved within 10 days, right? And that problem goes to another aircraft. So once that pilot finds out, or anyone who finds out that problem, they report it. And then yet this is on the minimum equipment list, so that plane takeoffs now. And once it comes back within 10 days, they replace it with the third one. So see, that's how one component could go up to 100 days. And this is what happens in major aircraft. Again, I use the word major, no colonel, no captain. The main aircraft's disasters. This has been the main problem, that the components were not replaced with the new ones, but they were taken from the other aircrafts, and then they kept on going until, because the aircrafts have, the airliners' budget is very limited now these days. So that's what happened. So So what my theory was initially, that the aircraft had one engine down, fully down, not working at all, because you see no thrust coming out after the takeoff. And because Boeing 787-8 can take off on one engine, so the pilot was forced to take it off, and we will come back. So that's why he was on the left side of the runway. Once he took off, the left engine also got, not flamed out, but probably accidentally, they put it at a position where it shouldn't have been. It should have been at toga, like take off and go around position, full power, because it was already under the dirty configuration. Dirty configuration means landing gears down, flaps down, and this aircraft, people allegedly say that RAT were deployed, but I don't believe in that one. But anyhow, even then, that induced more drag on the aircraft, and that's the dirty configuration, and the plane would definitely go down if the working engine's power is reduced to apart from any place in toga. So now, what's the update? The update is I would recommend Geoffrey Thomas and Richard Dodfrey. I saw their first video a few days ago, and the second one just today, 12 hours ago, and they actually assert my point. My video was right before them when I came up with this theory that at least one engine was failed and the second one didn't give the power out because of probably the pilot error. Right? Again, miscalculation by the pilot. Okay, I don't call it the error. Pilots are given those conditions that they have to react under those circumstances given to them by someone else. So they could miscalculate, but no one wants to die, especially the pilot sitting in front, seeing the death coming towards them. So we can't say it's an error. It's not a mistake. Miscalculation. I'm sugarcoating anything, but yes, this is what happens at the end of the day. So they came up with this today in the morning, and I would hats off to Richard, the expert. He actually has his own website, which is looking for MH370, the Malaysian airline that has been lost for over a decade now and has never been found. So under the comment section, if you go onto his website, and if you're a technical guy and you know your math well, you to understand a little bit of aviation, he has broken down each and everything. Now, what did he break down? Let me tell you a few things. The amount of time, let's start from the takeoff roll. 3 phases, right, of this ill-fated airplane. Number 1 was the takeoff run, which is when you got the powers full, and then you went to your V1, the first velocity, where you have to rotate your nose to get airborne, which is a point of no return. Because if at that time you don't complete your takeoff, you're going to end up in somewhere, in the walls, the fence of or in this case, there was a highway in front. So that's the point of no return, where you have to take off no matter what. Even dual engine failure. That's doomed though, but that's the first point. And that's the first. And the second one, when the aircraft actually took off and went up till the maximum height of the barometric pressure shown by flight radar 24 is 625 feet. That's the second one. And the third phase is leveling off and then getting down into the doctor's hostel. So 3 phases of the flight. The first phase of the flight, he has calculated with the takeoff weight, 3 categories. One is the takeoff weight, normal takeoff weight, which is 195 tons. Second one, he went with overloaded, but that's the maximum takeoff weight you can go, and that was about 230 tons. And third one, he went, what if in case of overloading, what would have happened? So that was about the 295 tons. So 3 different categories of weight. And then with one engine failure, the theory I presented in the beginning, that initially, which I think that it was on the ground, there was one engine failed and pilot was forced to take off because that's the Indian culture, that's the South Asian culture. With one engine failure, he said that this amount of thrust is required on the other engine, working engine, and this is going to be your climb ratio, your the ascending altitude per minute. And then with that kind of configuration, how much time would you take to get down and hit the ground if you have dual engine failure, if you have single engine failure, and if you don't have any single engine or dual engine failure? If your engines are perfectly fine, how long it's going to take for you to get it. So that's the technical details. If you are good, go and watch that one. Otherwise, they put it on the YouTube channel as well. This 25 minutes long video. You can go and watch that one. But mostly he's explaining about this, the calculations, how they were done. So still a bit technical. I'm trying to break it down for the layman. So now, first, the takeoff roll. He mentioned that a normal 787-8 would require about 1.9 kilometers of a runway. Under the weight category, the first one, takeoff weight 195 pounds with 241 to 242 passengers, and simple cargo. So 195 tons with both engine working, it would take about 1,900 meters, 1.9 kilometers. And with one engine failure, it's going to take about 2,100 meters to take off. One engine is, he called it OEI, one engine interrupted or inappropriate. So with one engine fully functional, with throttle set to toga. So this is going to fly at 2100, and then this aircraft has taken off about 400 meters from the full runway length. So this took a little longer, 2600 meters. I'm just using one unit word for everything, not feet, meter, mixing them up. So he's saying that this could be achieved only no matter the temperature conditions were different, the density altitude was lower than the standard altitude, which is 1013, and the density altitude of that day was 1001. But he said that once you calculate that one, there was no way that two engines could have let that plane run that long. This would have been a single engine failure. One engine is not working and the other one is working. So you could achieve 2,600 meters with this weight category, 195 tons on board, 242 passengers on board, including the crew. And no matter what the cargo is, 195 tons is the threshold. That's what he said. But my point over here is the same. What if the density altitude was input wrongly? Then these calculations would have been totally different. But this is the standard way of one engine failure and one functional. And with this weight category, you would come to 2,600, which this aircraft did. It did take off around that length of the runway with a downslope of 0.5 meters, and that's also calculated by Richard. So now confirms what he says, that the aircraft one engine was failed at the V1, right after they reached V1, one engine failed, but it would take a few seconds, 8 to 10 seconds, for that engine to spool down. It's not like the door open and shut. The propellers within the engine, they are running, and it takes some time for them to, slow down and get down to zero. So normally the spooling down or spooling up time for any jet engine is between 8 to 15 seconds. So once the aircraft took off, there should be a gust of wind on the right side as well. We don't see that. So here I disagree a bit that he said after V1, the engine failed, but I think that was way before that. That's the only difference of opinion we have at the moment. Second, the aircraft took off. It went up to 625 feet. So there where his calculation comes in again on his website, MH370, looking for that aircraft, but under the commerce section he mentioned that what does 625 feet mean? Now, we know that the sea level height, and we measure the runways, all the distances, we measure from the mean sea level height. And right now, for example, I'm on the third floor of my apartment, of my buildings. So I'm not at 0 degrees. The elevation of my city is 50 foot under normal temperature and pressure. Like normal temperature is plus 15 degrees Celsius. And we all know 30 psi or 1013 grams of mercury. So that's the normal temperature and pressure. Under that, the elevation of this place is 50. So I'm on the third floor. So if I have a meter that could measure the height barometrically, it should give this one story is about 18 foot. So I should be at 104 from the sea level, although there's no sea around in this city. Not how far from the ground level, because ground terrain is with ups and downs and everything. So you can't measure with the ground level. You always measure with the mean sea level. Airplanes, I mean, they measure the heights. Because if you're flying over K2, above ground level, it's going to show you 0 degrees, right? Or 0 foot, or like, let's say 10 foot. But are you 10 foot above ground level? Well, with respect to K2 or Mount Everest, yes, you are. But that's not. So you always go with the barometric pressure. So he used those kind of calculations and measured that the aircraft went up to 303 feet, because that was 1001 minus 1013, you get minus 13, you multiply that by 30, you get the feet, you minus the elevation of the field, and then you add up the height which you had, so that comes up to 303 feet. Now, that's very important. So normally, now we're talking about the second phase, when the Boeing 787 takes off with both engines working, to reach up till this height, okay, it's going to take shorter time. Under the same configuration, 5-degree flap and gears down, it's going to take quicker to achieve this height, but this aircraft took longer to achieve the second phase. He says that could also be the OEI, and one engine not working fully at its and he experienced it in the third phase. And he said that they should have reached 303, that was 1.54 wingspan, because the span of the wing is about 170 plus, okay, let me get into the meters, 60 meters, the span of the wings. So within first few seconds before the gear's up, you have to reach at least 1.5 the wingspan width, and you have to get into that much height. And he said that they were more or less close, and that could only be possible with this much of weight, with this much of engine efficiency, which means one engine failure, and 195 tons on board, including the aircraft weight, everything. So that was 195 tons. So till here, everything is going normally, and then he comes up with the final phase, which ended up with the aircraft's preparation. And now he says the aircraft gear was not down, also not retracted, and the flaps were set at 5 degrees. That's what he assumed, but with the confirmation on the ground pictures, the flaps were not 20 degrees or 30 degrees or anything more than that. No, they were there's a police guy standing on the wing. Imagine that. I mean, this site should have been secure right away, but yeah, this is India. So they flaps 5%, 5 degrees, and then the gears down. That's called a dirty configuration. And if both engines failed at this time, the aircraft would have glided with a ratio of 3.5 to 1. What does that mean? That means for every 1 unit for the aircraft, because it's going to go down, right? No thrust. Every 1 unit going down, the aircraft would move 3.5 units ahead. Like when it goes 1 foot down, 3.5 foot forward. 1 foot down, 3.5 foot forward. So for every 2 feet, 7. Every 4 feet, 14. So this should be the glide ratio of the aircraft if dual engine failure happened. But from 303 feet, the aircraft traveled, 100 meters, 101 meters, it reached up to the above ground. The true altitude of the aircraft was 101 meters. From 101 meters, it crashed at about 1,600 meters. So the slope down was about 1,600 meters away. So the glide ratio was 17 to 1. Now think again. Dual engine failure, it should be 3.5 to 1. Here, 17 to 1. Meaning with this dirty configuration, with so much drag induced, there was something giving that aircraft power, and that was the only working engine. Now, he says that engine must have been working from idle to 5%. What does idle mean? Means you get the power down to 0%, but you haven't turned off the fuel supply switch. So the engine would be giving you some thrust. It's never zero. See, when we are on the ground and you see the power is normally it's at idle position and the aircraft is not moving, but the engines are still running. That's why you're getting the heat and the stuff, and the air conditioning and the lights are working. Mostly, once the engines are started, the APU, the auxiliary power unit, is turned off, and you are relying on the engine's power. So this is what has happened. So an aircraft went down after 1,700 meters traveling on the ground. Not on the ground. I mean, if you count it from the air, the distances covered on the ground was 1,700 meters. So glide ratio of 17:1, which cannot be given by achieved by dual engine failure. It has to be at least one engine completely failed and the second engine was at idle, or he said 5 to 7% of power. Now, think of, again, these pilots, they have never experienced this kind of problem, because another whistleblower, he says that all these pilots of 787-8 have never been on a 787-8 simulator. They have been simulating the problems on 737 maybe, or maybe Airbus simulator. I don't know if this could happen in the civilized world, but trust me, if someone tells me this, that in South Asia this happens, I believe that.
The simulator in which the training and checks were being done is not even the type of aircraft that the airline was using.
You train a pilot on something else, and then he's being handed over to do something.
You are supposed to have, the simulator is to match the type of aircraft that you are checking the pilot on. It's like carrying out a Boeing pilot, do a check on the Airbus. I'm just giving a simple example. Doesn't validate his license. You're supposed...
Yes, jugaad, the shortcut. So this part was not trained. So probably, the working engine was put down to idle, and that's why the call makes total sense. Thrust not achieved, because he was promised the thrust would be achieved with even single engine failure. And instead of, they got the working engine power to idle, engine was still running. That's why they got the minimum thrust of 17:1 glide ratio. Otherwise, they would have gone quicker, faster, and would have hit the ground after maybe 300 meters. But they went all the way till 15 to 1,600 meters into the doctor's hospital. They cleared the first two obstacles, which are the minimum set of the standard to clear for Boeing 787-8. If you don't meet those requirements, you do not take off from that runway. That means that they did, and they went into the third one. So, bottom line, he said that we cannot predict at the moment that is it the manufacturing fault, the manufacturer's fault, or it's the operators like the Air India and the ground staff, or the pilot's fault. But no, I could totally say it's the administration fault, it's the engineering fault, it's the loadmaster fault, it's the whole administration fault to let that faulty aircraft fly. And these pilots, within 90 seconds, what do you think they can pull a miracle? No. So blaming on the pilots is a shame. Blaming on Boeing is another shame. And blaming Air India is the lesser shame. So if someone wants to make a judgment, these are the culprits. The Air India administration along with Tata. Rest two, I will wait for the report. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.